Hello and welcome to Frank's School. I'm going on with the state of the school for the year 2023. Basically, what's happened in the past year. This is the 5th video in this series. It would be 13th year of my school, 4th day of this year, and the first and only video today. All right. First of all, yesterday I posted, without any explanation really, I posted a 4th in the series. What I did was I filmed right in about that spot. There's a spring coming out of the hillside there. And because of the pigs and the rooting that they've been doing, it became real clear where it is. And that's one of the services that they do. And so I thought, you know, it got real wet all of a sudden. The ground's real wet right now. Matter of fact, there's some water coming through the basement right now because it's coming out of the hill. I'm down in here. And it was coming strongly out of a spring. And I wanted to show that. It's called an olho d'água in Portuguese, and ojo d'água, I think, in ojo de agua or something like that in Spanish. And I wanted to show where it was. And you saw some of the ditch along there. All right, that was yesterday. What I want to do today is give you a little bit of pertinent information, history, to understand that'll help you understand what I'm doing here. So a history of this ground, really. So let's start. It was settled sometime about 1780, maybe 1790. There's a little cabin down there on my cousin's ground that dates probably from about then. I have a picture from the about maybe 1850 photograph that shows a cabin right in here. So it was that. And then for about 100 years, it gradually became a village. Well, that village was basically in here, and little by little I'm finding it. That village, though, was bought up by a Jewish man named Norbert Oppenheimer, and he converted the whole thing into a mining operation. I don't know how long the village extended into that time, but he bought up all the little properties, consolidated, and lived right there. And for about 20 years or so, this was very aggressively mined, surface mined mostly, for iron ore. There was a narrow gauge railroad came up through here that he developed, that brought up through here, and to take the ore out. And when I refer to the mining, well, that's what I'm referring to. This was a mine face. There was a mine face here. There's a shaft mine up in here. A lot of mining way up on the mountain. There was an inclined plane up there. A lot of mining in this area here, which was my cousin's now. Most of that is. So it was mining. But eventually he went bust on that. The ore changed. And by 1942, my grandfather bought it. Now, he bought it for his son to come home to. He was a pilot in World War II, but he named Frank. I was named after him. He never came home. He was killed over in North Africa, shot down, a pilot. So he never came home. Then my grandfather basically used it as his hobby, and he called it the ranch. He didn't try to farm it. He did a lot. I mean, he planted the fields. He made alfalfa. But this was mountain ground. This was never good land for farming. So he didn't call it a farm, he called it a ranch, and he ran cattle on it. And so it was up until when he died, which was in, he died in 1963, December, and then it went to his 2 daughters who were left. And they, for about a period of maybe 8 years or so, maybe it wasn't quite that much, everyone loved the land, and they tried 600 acres now, and they tried to keep it, the 2 of them together, but eventually they had to divide it. And that division occurred in about 1975. And from that point on, the division was right here, and 300 acres went to my aunt and uncle. 300 acres went to my mom and dad, and then eventually, after both my father and mother died, it fell to their 5 children, my 4 sisters and me. So it went from 300 down, or 600 down to 2 times 300. Then of this side, my cousin, one cousin bought it out, really got it, and then when it came to my sisters now, 3 of them sold out. They weren't gonna. They realized they couldn't do this. My grandfather had 8 grandchildren. He had 3 children, 2 daughters, 1 son. He had 8 who was killed. He had 8 grandchildren, 7 granddaughters, 1 grandson, who was me, named after his son. Anyway, when I came here, and when I refer to the Cherry Tree House, my mother and father at that time, they asked me if I could move that building 70 miles away. It was her home place. That house was built by her great-grandfather in Cherry Tree, Pennsylvania. I tore it down, trucked it down here, and put it back up. You'll see it. I'll refer to it now and then, but it's not part of Frank's school. I mean, I don't consider it that. But when I came here in 1974, April 1st, as a matter of fact, my purpose really was to be my mother's agent, because I had as much right to be here as anybody, because by now tensions were really tense, or relations were really tense between my mother and her sister. And I kind of forced the division, at which point I took on the fictitious name of Wedge, because I acted like a wedge to split that apart. And it was very hard to do, but we finally did divide it. But when I came here, my mom laid on me some limitations. I could not spray, as farming, I could not spray, I could not fertilize, and I could not plow. Well, I basically felt, well, that means I can't farm, not in the real world of that time. Later on, I put even stricter limitations on myself in that I do not use fossil fuels much at all. I mean, I have a tractor, but I haven't run it in a year. So it's basically fossil fuel free. One other thing to mention is the bulldozing. It occurred sometime in the 1920s or 30s, where Oppenheimer, in order to sell this property, basically bulldozed the whole thing smooth. And that's why I'll refer to that bulldozing. So the pigs have been exposing places that had been bulldozed. So when my grandfather bought it, there were a few buildings standing on it. I'm going real fast, and you can see this stuff elsewhere. I'll maybe give you a link or talk about it a little bit more later if you're interested in this history. But that's some of the stuff I think you need to know to understand what goes on there, or what this land is like. Bye for now.